Welcome to the Lion Counseling Podcast. I'm Mark Odlin, and this is Zach Carter. Our mission is to help men obtain success, purpose, happiness, and peace in their career and their personal lives. Today, we're talking about manhood, how to define it, and what prevents us from attaining it.
Escape the cage now. Be the lion you was destined to be. Born ready for the war, now my effort is free. The level's been set, time to wrestle the beast. Testing my G, it's getting heavy indeed. The struggle I embrace now, never retreat. I see the test as a blessing indeed. I'm taking steps on the treacherous peak. Now it's destined to be. I'm on my destiny's feet. Shine with the one piece.
If you're looking for help in your life, reach out to us at escapethecagenow.com or check out the link in the description box. So today, this topic, man up. Zach, I want to turn it over to you. This is a complicated topic. It's in our culture. We see it all the time in our counseling practice. And I would imagine there's a lot of confusing messages. I know there are a lot of confusing messages for guys out there today on what it means to be a man. And let's dive right in. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that today.
Yeah. And this is a topic that I really struggle with for a really long time, right? I grew up, my little brother became a firefighter and I became a counselor. And so like I was the kid that was like the sensitive musician crying all the time. And he was the dude staring at me like, why are you crying all the time?
Yep.
And so I really struggle with this topic. Like, am I really a man? Like this is very difficult. And so after years of kind of thinking this through, I think I've got a couple good examples that we'll start with as a representation of manhood. And then we'll discuss what are the components and how do we get there. So I think two great examples of manhood are Jesus and John Wick. So let's start with that. If you're a Christian, Jesus is going to be the example, right? And so what do we see in Jesus? Well, a lot of people think Jesus is the dude that's like the nice guy and he's sensitive with kids and he's like, always being kind and saying peace on earth, goodwill towards all men, right? All this stuff, right? And if you actually read about him, the dude was a carpenter. Like he worked with his hands, right? The dude's best friends were carrying around old school gats, right? They were strapped. They had their swords, right? So like, why did they have swords if they didn't intend to use them? Like, that's kind of strange. Like, we don't think of like Jesus hanging around a bunch of guys that have weapons on them. One of them cut a dude's ear off, right? And so like, there was a moment where Jesus was going through the temple, kicking over tables, whipping people. Like, what is that? And then we read in Revelation that he's going to come back with a sword, right? So
Yep.
So there's two parts of Jesus, right? There is the part of Jesus that is kind, that is loving, that is gentle with people, but there's also the side of Jesus that's very tough, very like what we would say is masculine, like working with your hands, right? And so, yeah, so that's a good example, I think, if men are Christians for like, looking at him. If you're not a Christian, if you're like, that's not really my thing, let's talk about John Wick. John Wick's manly too, right? And so like we get this dude that is not afraid to take out some Russians, right? And so, but at the same time, we see these images of him spending time with his wife, being gentle with his wife, right? Having a puppy, taking care of dogs, right? Being gentle with the dogs. Like he's not beating up on the dogs, right? He's like very gentle, very, very caring when he has people or animals that he's close with. Any thoughts on this, Mark?
Yeah, I mean that is such a profound thought that we can almost even with people with devout faith, it can be easy to kind of fall into thinking about the parts of our faith or the parts of someone we admire, and just trying to connect with the pieces we resonate with and not looking at the full picture, right? Look at and if you only look at the verses where Jesus or God is like super tough, super assertive, maybe even harsh at times, we're missing out on that other side, the complete picture of the tender side, the loving, the grace, the forgiveness. But it's almost like if you spend too much time on just one side, you're missing the full picture.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, it really it's very thought provoking as you're bringing up this example. Like I guess we can think about both examples, but first thinking about Jesus, how It's like if I'm really trying to model my life after him, if that's something that I want to try to do, like what's my reference point? And how do I even pursue that? And but one thing I'm kind of getting from you, and tell me if this is right, it's almost like I think about this. I think about like the volume, like the volume on my computer, on my cell phone, and it's like the masculinity is at the top and the femininity is at the bottom. And I think our culture is saying in a lot of places, masculinity is bad and toxic, and so you just have to turn down the volume toward the feminine. And what I hear from you, it's not quite like that. It's almost like turn up the volume actually on authentic masculinity, and also turn up the volume on some of those maybe creative or emotional or self-reflective sides of us as men, because that's also part of masculinity. That's actually not femininity doesn't have a monopoly on being creative, being emotional, being loving. That can be a genuine part of masculinity as well. So you might have a different metaphor or way of thinking about that, but that's kind of what came to mind for me just now.
Yeah, no, and that's great. And it is tough because if we're in a culture right now where, if you look at the 40s and the 50s, it feels like a lot of the media that was coming out that, men wore suits and they go and fight in wars and you go and you fish, right? There was a few years ago, I forget the name of the book, but there was a book that came out in Christian circles that was really popular that was talking about manhood. It was like basically manhood was you go out into the woods and you build your own cabin and you kill bears with your bare hands and like it's like all and I was like, dude, I'm not interested in any of that. So like, am I a man? And so there's like that aspect, and then there's
Yeah,
the aspect of like, oh, don't be assertive, don't be too tough in our culture now, right? And so like what is a guy supposed to do? Like what are they supposed to model themselves after
right.
when you have these two like, oh, you're supposed to be overly sensitive or you're not supposed to have any emotions at all. So like where do we fall? And so it sounds like that's kind of where you
Yeah.
were heading, Mark.
Yeah, that's right. And as as you're saying that, Zach, too, the other practical question that comes to mind for me around this issue is kind of what we face as counselors too, right? Is
Hmm.
what is that balance between comfort and stress or anxiety,
Hmm.
right? And it's
Hmm.
like on one hand, there are guys that we work with, and you just want to be like, man, like stop beating yourself up. Like you are a unique creation of God with your own set of gifts and talents and personality. And he
Hmm.
didn't wire you to be the guy to try to kill the bear with your own hands. And that's okay. Like that is
Yeah.
totally okay. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
go with that. Like he made you this way. Like that's awesome. Like live that to the fullest. And then there's this other side of me that's like, yeah, but he probably should be able to kill a bear. So, so it's like,
100%.
so it's like, how much do we stretch ourselves on the edges of who we are, who we think we
Hmm.
are, who we're created to be, and
Hmm.
learn new skills and pick up new ways of expressing ourselves and having competency in the world?
Hmm.
And how much do we just kind of be like, man, stop pressuring me. Let me just be who I am and live that out. So maybe
Right.
I'm overblowing that tension, but that's for me, I guess that's what comes up. Like,
Yeah, I think that's perfect. Right. And so, like, back to the spectrum question. So maybe it's not even, masculinity versus femininity, right? Maybe,
right.
maybe the spectrum for a lot of guys is on one end, there's the nice guy, on the other end's the bad boy,
Yeah.
right? And so, like, do I need to be fake? Do I need to go all the way over to bad boy, right? And so it's a balance. It's like where can we find the danger that's within men to be dangerous, right? While also having kindness, right? Having being loving, right? Being truthful. And so I think that is the goal that should be for becoming a man. I think that's what we're drawn to in certain manly characters in
Yeah.
media or in scripture or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So then begs the question, right? Okay, so if I'm on one end of the spectrum or I'm on the other, like what do I do? So
Right.
I say we start with nice guy, right?
Yeah.
Close
Okay.
to my heart because I felt like I grew up being the nice guy. So
Yep.
like, what do you do if you're the nice guy? So first off, you got to do some work on yourself before going out and practicing.
Yeah.
So the first thing you need to realize is nice is not a virtue. It's not a
Yes.
virtue. Okay. And, I work with a lot of guys who struggle with addictions. And oftentimes what we talk about is you have to replace one pattern of behavior with a healthier pattern, right? So if when you're stressed, you go and drink, then like instead you go for a run or you reach out to friends and you hang out with friends or you engage in a hobby, right? So you want to replace that drinking with something else. So I encourage you, if you're the nice guy, we need to replace nice with something better, right? Nice might not be morally wrong, but it's probably not going to work for you in the long term, right?
Right.
So replacing it with virtues like truthfulness or being loving, I think is the first step, right? So finding a virtue and saying like, okay, I'm going to replace nice with this
Yeah.
virtue. Any thoughts on that, Mark?
Well, yeah. I mean, because I think there's a lot there with the niceness piece.
Mhm,
Because yeah, I mean, it can be easy to hide behind I'm a nice person
mhm,
when in fact you're just avoiding conflict,
mhm,
or you're avoiding disappointing people, or you're being paralyzed by your perfectionism, and so you're just nice to everyone, or you don't have the confidence to assert yourself in the world, and so you tell yourself I'm just being nice,
mhm,
but really you're missing out on opportunities. You never ask the girl on the date, you never apply for the job, um, you never stand up to your spouse, and have an important conversation that needs to be had, right? And
mhm,
so I think some people grow up too, I think, feeling like niceness is a virtue. It's modeled by their parents. And maybe it's never spoken aloud, but this idea that if I rock the boat, if I stand up for myself, if I um, embrace a sense of boldness in the world or competency, um, and can still do that lovingly, then somehow bad things are going to happen. And so there's just this deep aversion that some guys have to um, potentially failing and potentially messing things up. And they just, I don't know. And sometimes they're not even aware of it. They're on autopilot, just
mhm,
trying to be nice. And they don't, it just feels like something's not right in the world. And, you know, people in their life might be well intentioned and say, you're special just the way you are. It's totally fine. But deep down, the guy's like, I don't feel fine.
mhm,
This niceness thing, something, it's not the full picture. I want more. And I think you're tapping into that, Zach, that there's a more well-rounded masculinity that's better than niceness.
mhm,
Um, it's not the abandonment of care or virtue, but it's almost like niceness is settling for something even more shallow almost.
mhm. Yeah, I think that's awesome. I agree totally. So what do they do then? Okay, so you're the guy out there. You're like, okay, I'm on board. I'm going to replace nice with something like truthfulness, but like I'm still nervous to do this. Okay, there's some very staple cognitive behavioral questions you can ask yourself that you can use as you begin to try to practice being more assertive, right? Being stronger, being braver. Okay, so if you got notes, write this down. Okay, so one great question is, if I was in the other person's shoes, how would I want to be approached or treated? Right? So if I was in the other person's shoes,
Yep.
how would I want to be approached or treated? And two, what's the worst thing that's going to happen if I confront this person? What's the best
Mm.
thing? And what's the thing that's most likely to happen?
Hmm.
Okay, so you want to ask yourself those questions. So let's give an example that I think any nice guy would have a tough time
Sure.
with, which is sending food back at the restaurant, right? So you're
Uh,
at the restaurant,
yep.
the waiter or waitress, they're super nice, but they didn't give you fries, man. They gave you mashed potatoes, and that's kind of annoying. They didn't bring the honey mustard that you like. Like they missed it, right? And so you're like, I'll just deal with it, right? So if you're like, no, I'm trying to be truthful, right? I'm trying not to avoid conflict. Ask yourself a few questions, okay? What would the owner want you to do? So what happens with a lot of nice guys, I think, is that they'll go to that restaurant if they screw up the order. Okay, I just won't come back. So like ultimately, are you actually being nice? Are you even doing the thing that you're trying to do? Or are
Right.
you just avoiding conflict? Because the owner would say, it would be nice if you let me know so that we could fix it because I want you back. I want you to continue spending money here. Right. And so truthfulness, once again, is the better route to go. Right. So ask yourself, what would they want me to do? Right. Next is, what's the worst thing that can happen if you tell the thing to the waiter? Maybe you hurt their feelings. Maybe they feel bad. Okay, sure, right? But I think that's probably the end of it, right? What's the best thing? Oh man, they are like, you know what? I've been trying to get better at this, and I'm going to find some ways to make sure that I remember orders because other customers have been telling me, shoot, I haven't been reminding. So they like, you know what? I'm gonna start taking notes. I haven't been taking notes. I've been trying to remember. I'm gonna start taking notes. And now they're a better waiter or waitress.
Yeah.
What's the most likely thing to happen? Most likely they're not going to care. Go grab your other food and then they're not going to think about it. That's the most likely
Right,
situation.
right.
And then you have the food that you want, right? So if you're a person that's a nice guy, you have difficult asserting yourself, sending food back at the restaurant, that's actually a really good place to start practicing that assertiveness.
I like it. Even if they get the order right. Are you saying we should try that, Zach? No, I'm
You know, if truthfulness is the virtue, probably not.
probably not. But I mean, if you, yeah, no, I get what you're saying. There are these opportunities. That's a classic one. Because I love that. That's a place to practice. And it might feel really uncomfortable, I imagine, if consider yourself a nice guy and to do that, it feels like you're being mean. It feels like that fill in the blank. Um, but I love the way that you broke that down with like using your rational mind to actually sort through the emotions, right? Um and then yeah, there I think then you and embracing the awkwardness and just being like this is gonna get better with time, right? Um but yeah, I think I come back to what you were saying too before about like um niceness not being a virtue necessarily, right? Because I can't remember if it was like a Jordan Peterson thing, but saying like this idea that um, not not doing something isn't inherently a virtue if you're not even able to do that thing to begin with,
Mhm.
right? If you have the ability to send back your food because you are confident, you've done it before, and then once in a while you're like, oh, I'll just give that waiter a break. Well, that's different than a guy who's like, I just don't have it inside me to be able to get my order right or send the food back, right? Because one place is coming, one guy's coming from a place of strength, and the other guy's just coming from this place of like timidness. And as you know full well too, whether it comes to friends, job opportunities, or the dating scene, or even guys who are married, that timidness is not necessarily an attractive quality to other people. And people are scanning to say, can I trust this person? Will they follow through? Do they have my back? Are they capable of having my back? Um, so sending back the food might seem like such a small thing, but it's kind of representative of this bigger dynamic of maybe I'm not the kind of guy yet who sends back my food, but am I willing to do the work to become a guy who can do that?
Right.
And if you have that spirit of openness and like willing to take on a new challenge and build a skill, um, man, I admire that a lot because that's shifting gears.
Yeah, it's super difficult if you're not practicing that. So for some people that might be easy, but for you maybe it's not, right? And then you're able to build up to bigger things like confronting your boss and saying, I don't feel like I'm being paid enough,
Right.
or I feel like I'm being overworked, right?
Mhm.
And so if you're like, well, but Zach, so this is all well and good. This is kind of theoretical. Do you have something like super tangible that I can do?
Mhm.
Well, my favorite method is the compliment sandwich. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't, right? And so you can, if you were talking about the waiter, it's like you can start gently, right? You don't need to be a jerk about it, right? You don't need to go on the other end of the spectrum, too far on the other end of the spectrum and be a
Yep.
jerk. You can be like, hey, appreciate all the work you're doing for us. So I actually ordered fries, not the mashed potatoes. Would you mind grabbing that for me? Just once again, I appreciate you, man. Thanks for grabbing that. Right. And so like you can do it in a way where you're nice at the beginning, right? We'll call
Yeah.
it kind if we're trying to avoid nice. Like you're being kind at the beginning, you're inserting the confrontation, and then you're kind at the end again, right? And so you can find a way to practically do that and use a method like that to be assertive while still feeling like, okay, I'm decreasing the likelihood of hurting the other person in some way.
Dude, that was smooth. I will say I was pretending I was a waiter for a second, and like I was like ready to give you a free dessert on top of like on top of the fries because I'm like, man, somehow I made a mistake, but I feel better about myself because this guy
Yeah.
is so good.
Yeah.
I
You can
like
call
it.
and if there's something that the waiter did, it's like, hey man, dude, you're the coolest. Like you've been super cool when you've come up and you've talked to us and told us jokes. You're really funny, man. Hey, oh, by the way, like, hey, do you mind switching this out for me? I'd asked for fries, right? And so you can, if you don't have a compliment, specifically, you can just be kind and just say like, "Hey, I appreciate you. I just want you to know that." And then insert it in. So either way, whether you actually find a compliment, it's like, "Hey, dude, you're super funny, by the way." Like, or whatever, like that can definitely be a great way to be assertive without being a jerk, right?
Exactly. I love that. I think that's and what a practical example. The compliment sandwich. All right, I can remember
Mhm.
that.
It's great. I love it. Yeah, I had a
I
boss
like
pull it
it.
on me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a boss pull it on me. I was like, okay, I'll do better, but thanks for being so nice. Yeah, it's so great. So now we've talked about the nice
Yeah,
guy.
yeah.
Let's talk about the bad boy if you're overly tough, right? And so here, I just can like hear the audible groan as I'm about to say this, but please stick with me. Okay. So yes, we're gonna have to talk about emotions. Yes, we're gonna have to talk about feelings. And before you shut this off, I'm like you, man. Whenever people brought up emotions, I like to avoid talking about emotions as much as the next guy. I was in a counseling program and they would say, let's talk about emotions. And I would be like, do we have to? But if you understand emotions, if you understand their biological purpose, we've talked about it in a different video, but just as like a brief review, things like depression. What is the purpose? The purpose of depression is focusing on something that happened in the past that was bad, right? And it slows you down, right? And so it slows you down so you can figure out what can I do
Right.
next time to make sure that this doesn't happen again, right? Anxiety is future focus. It speeds you up. It says you need to fix this problem before something bad happens in the future, right? So if you
Yeah.
understand that each emotion has a purpose, then you'll expand your vocabulary outside of I feel bad, I feel mad, right? Those are the two
Yeah.
things, especially if you're not on the nice guy spectrum, you're on the tougher guy spectrum that you need to understand, right? So that when you and your wife are yelling at each other, when you are confronting your neighbor about the annoying things that he's doing, right? You can actually communicate in a way that leads the other person to be less defensive, right? So if you're talking to your wife and you're able to say like it's not about being mad, it's that I was disappointed that this thing happened, or hey babe, right now with work and with kids and everything, I'm just feeling overwhelmed, or hey, I want to help with this particular thing that's going wrong, but I'm confused. I just don't know what to do, right? So if you're able to communicate that, you can keep your man card. Man card is still kept, but you
Yeah.
can actually communicate in a way that's healthy, right? Because especially in the family setting, typically, I'm not an expert on women, but most of the ones I've talked to, they want you to be, the grizzly
Right.
bear to the bad guy that's coming in, but they want you to be the teddy bear in the house with her and the kids, right? So you need to be able to wear both those hats. Any thoughts?
I'm just reeling from first we were trying to kill grizzly bears, and now we are the grizzly bear and we're the
Now we
teddy
are.
bear. So there's lots of bear
Right.
metaphors
There's a
happening.
lot of bear metaphors
And I'm
today.
just overwhelmed, Zach. I don't know how to
And,
handle it. So
and then you should be eating gummy bears. That's going
okay.
to help decrease the toughness as well if you're
No,
overly tough.
no,
Yeah.
that I've never actually heard the grizzly bear teddy bear thing, and it's in my brain forever now. So I think that captures it very well.
Yeah.
And and I think just pausing to recognize that I think guys who rightly recognize that there's a place for being a provider and a protector to have strength in this world. Sometimes they feel cornered in this culture and they double down on the no emotions thing. And I think we're just inviting guys to be like, dude, like, yeah, be that strong guy, be that protector, be that provider, know how to have these skills. And, I think about these emotions as they're like electrical impulses, right? Just shooting through our body, giving us information. And, it's kind of like if you're a homeowner out there or even have an apartment, yeah, you don't have to be an electrician, but having some basic understanding of like what electricity does in your house, like that's not a bad thing. It's just information. It's just information that empowers you to understand what's happening. Like um, if there's a lightning storm, yeah, maybe you want to unplug some of your appliances so that things don't blow up, right? Or maybe if there's a surge, I've got the space heater running, and all this electricity is being pulled, and then the circuit breaker flips so that the house doesn't like blow up.
Mhm.
Oh. that doesn't mean that the circuitry is weak or like somehow like wimpy or whatever. It's just like, thank goodness it's there. Like, so full circle back to what you were saying is emotions aren't really good or bad. When they're firing the right way, they're meant to keep us alive. They serve a purpose. And I just think that's like a game changer. If guys haven't heard that before, that every emotion, when it's working the right way, has a purpose and it's meant to keep us alive or connect us to other people. And so, yeah, I think I just really appreciate what you're saying, Zach, because like that is such helpful knowledge for us. And it's such a good reminder for me, even just to like take that in.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, so that's primarily what I had today on manhood. I'll let you have the last word. Anything that maybe we didn't cover today before we wrap?
Man, that's a good question. I think my inner John Wick is always a battle. It's like I know we both trained jujitsu before, and
Yeah.
I was getting close to my blue belt, and then life happened and got busy, and I've been out for a few months, and I'm like, okay,
Oh,
it's like I have to go back.
so
Part of me
close.
is resisting it at all costs, and the other part of me is like,
Mhm.
I got to do it. I just got to do
Mhm.
it. And
Ah.
so I think that's going back full circle, the attention piece of like,
Mhm.
oh man, I know that's not my identity. Uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, if there's a bad guy on the bus, like I want to be able to do something. So-
Right.
and
Yeah.
it'll probably never happen. I'll never use my magic power of jujitsu in real life, but it's but the John Wick, I feel like there's another episode in there somewhere that we can flesh out
Mhm.
the John Wick even more because I'm intrigued.
Well, look, even if you can't be the John Wick, grab a whip, be like Jesus, and whip those people, like whoever it is. First time anyone's ever heard that.
That Zach Carter guy, he thinks outside the box. People across the country will be preaching sermons on this viral Zach Carter video, but it's your
Be
whip.
more like Jesus and whip people.
Yeah. If you've been with us for a while, you'll pick up that we do have some sarcasm in this podcast, and
Yes,
that's
just a little
okay.
bit.
That's okay.
Just a little bit.
I love it. Well,
Well,
Zach, thank you so much. It's
mhm.
been great talking with you as always. It's so great to dig into these topics. Yeah, of course, if you like this video and want to hear more, and be informed of future videos, hit that subscribe button and notification bell to be aware of when they come out. And if you're looking for help, feel free to reach out at escapethecagenow.com and or click in the link in the description box. So thanks everybody for hanging out with us, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, bye.